Hello, Worlds ISS here. So we are updating the radar builder, and there will now be a BioLink tier list for Sector 2. Uh, the last did these at the end of Sector 1. It's now roughly the end of Sector 2. Shouldn't be too long before there is a Sector 3 update. And let's just quickly go over what we're doing for the tier list here. So the way I split down the letter grades here, S certainly needs a nerf. Anything that I think in is too powerful doesn't really leave space for the other things to be as good as they can be. Is kind of suspect, but uh, it could go either way. Like it might just be more powerful because it's better against the things that are actually too powerful. So these ones I think are a little bit too high. B and C is like this is like the balance point. So B, if everything is B, that means that everything is balanced and everything feels good. That would be basically impossible in almost any game. But like the more percentage of the stuff that's in B is more likely that I think that the game is at a balance point. Uh, C is the low end of that. Like it's still pretty good. But there's maybe like a couple of things that feel off about it. Maybe it feels clunky or something. But it's not quite it. It's still probably balanced, but it could use like a little bit of like quality of life to make it feel a little bit better. D and F are the like low end. These things are too weak. Anything in D is probably just like it is weak, but not necessarily like completely useless. Whereas in F, like everything that the if something was in F, that's a complete failure. Anything that happens in there is completely outclassed by something else, or completely useless. Either or. And we didn't have anything in F last time. There hasn't been nerfs to anything that was super weak, so we're probably not going to have anything in F this time. But I just keep it there uh, for the sake of it, and because like I do want there to be some way for like a spot for things that are indeed to fall into if they do end up getting worse. But anyway, let's get right into it. I'm going to start with the hardware this time, and we're going to do it alphabetically. So let's start with the blast grenade. Previously, I put this in B, I believe, and that was a pretty good. I think that is a pretty good spot. But what is happening currently is there is a known issue. It's on the known issues board and listed as fixed in the Sector 3 update. So this hopefully won't be the case long term. I'm actually going to move it down to C. The issue that is happening here is that when a grenade hits the end of a def piston, it gets disappeared. Uh, so you don't get the explosion, you don't get the damage, so you don't get any value from your grenade when that happens. And you only get 3 grenades, and I think it's only like the part of the balance point of them is that they will always go off, and so you get 3 of them. Whereas if you're only getting 2 or 1, I actually don't think they would be good enough. Like 2 would probably be C, and like if you had 1 grenade, I would probably consider putting it down to F because like anything else would be better in almost every case. But in this case, because it's only with def pistons and only slightly inconsistent, I'm going to put it in C. Uh, but the moment that bug is fixed, I'll probably move it back up to B. Uh, Next one up, we have the flash barrier. I previously had this in A, but I'm actually going to drop this down to B. Um, this is just a change of opinion because I actually don't. I think there's enough situations where, the flash barrier takes too long to activate, or um, you perfectly space it over the def piston so that you end up dying to the def piston before it hits the shield or stuff like that. Um, there's enough situations like that where I actually think that it's probably not actually as overpowered. It's probably not actually above the power curve, like I had it listed previously, even though it does let you survive a lot of situations that you would not have otherwise been able to. However, the Phoenix pods I am going to put in A. I think they're easily the best of the hardware, and they just offer so much versatility. Like, obviously, it's not great if you're doing like a no death challenge or something, but typically speaking, if you are running Phoenix pods and you are just putting them down, you will often clear maps so much quicker than you would have otherwise, just because the Phoenix pod gives you a checkpoint. And you can definitely feel the difference when you like grab the gen mat and accidentally clear your Phoenix pod and forget to throw a new one down. It's a very big difference. So these are quite strong, but I don't think they're necessarily the biggest problem element in the game currently. Like, I don't think a Phoenix Pod nerf would necessarily be the most positive impact of it in the game. So that's why I leave them in A rather than S. I think they are a little bit above the curve, but the, there's a lot of ways that they could be tweaked that could lead them to um, that could lead it to them being in like a lot of small ways that they could be tweaked that I think would drop them down to B. I just think they're a little bit over the power level of what I would expect hardware to be and of the existing hardware. Like these two, I think are a lot closer than this is. So the blast grenade and the flash barrier, I think, were a lot closer in power than the flash barrier is to, say, the Phoenix pod or the blast grenade to the Phoenix pod is. But yeah, we'll just leave that there for now. I'm also going to keep the spike drive in D for the exact same reasons I had it last time. It only impacts walking speed. You almost always want to go into a grapple. And now there is some slight cases where you might be running a swiftness enhancement that would allow you to actually move faster on foot than just standard grapple, but grapple jumps still beat that in all cases. I don't think I would ever. Um, the only time I'd really recommend the spike drive is it when you're trying to specifically shave off fractions of seconds in a speedrun attempt. Uh, for an actual speedrun leaderboard. If you are blind speedrunning maps in the active queue, you're not a fraction of a second is not going to matter because you will only be getting fractions of seconds, like literally frames. Um, you can count the effect of this of both of spike drives you get in frames a lot of the time, and it will not be super ridiculous. Anyway, that's all the hardware, so let's go on to the weapons. For weapons, let's start with the arc barrier. It's the first one alphabetically. So the arc barrier, previously I had in S, but it did get a very big nerf in one of the patches. It dropped its active time from 1.5 seconds to 1 second. And while I would still, if the Nautilus was being sorted here, I would still have that in S. I actually think I will drop the arc barrier down to A. I think the arc barrier, the main problematic aspects of the arc barrier are its interactions with the Nautilus suit now, as opposed to previously I thought the base level of the arc barrier was also a little bit too strong. Was too strong. But now I think it's only really kept up out of like I think it would be B if the Nautilus suit didn't exist. But the Nautilus suit does exist, so I'm going to leave it in A. I think that's a fair compromise because I don't think just running the arc barrier by itself really justifies an S anymore, even though it is the best defensive option, but that's also because it's the only defensive weapon. And it has no offensive capability to make up for that, which I think is a fair compromise. Uh, and the numbers on it are pretty low, and dropping from 1.5 to 1 second unconditional, like just the standard active time, is a very big deal because a lot of traps take about 1.25 seconds to activate, and then things like bombs have a 0.75 second activation after the bomb collides with something. So even if you get the timing right for one trap, other traps might go off and you can die. You can potentially die in that 1 second if you don't time it perfectly. Like particularly if you've got like an impaler, a grappling hook, which is now 0.7 second activation, a bolt shot, and a bomb. Like if you can get all four of those aimed at the same spot, they are all four completely different times, and the biggest problem will be that the grappling hook will guarantee a perfect block. But if we ignore that for a moment, the um, there's a difference between activation from about zero point 0.7 seconds all the way to about 2 on the bomb trap. And that's like a 1.3 second difference, and that's huge. That's huge, and that's big enough that previously the arc barrier would have covered that, but it doesn't anymore, and that's why I think it should drop a tier. Next up, we've got the Demo Cannon. Demo Cannon did get a buff, but it was kind of like a small quality of life one. It upped the ammo from 3 to 4. Kind of useful with the enhancements, because I believe that means it gets an extra ammo from the ammo enhancements. But overall, I think that it's still just a B tier, which is, balanced, but on the good side of balance. Like, it feels good, but it's not overpowered, which I think is fine, and I'm fine for it to continue to exist in this space. That seems good. Uh, for the Falconic Plasma Bow, previously this was A. I'm actually dropping it to B because the spontaneous corrosion cubes. Uh, so the Falconic Plasma Bow only really needs something that is a fairly complete offensive profile in its other weapon, and it only really combos well with the Volt Lancer because of that. And with that, nowadays you could put on Scatter Shot and use it with the Arc Barrier, but that's enhancements, hard to farm enhancements, so it's only really useful in social, and it is fun, fun little gimmick build you can do for social raids. But um, the the main thing is because it mainly goes with the Volt Lancer, you kind of want to, and with that particular loadout, you kind of want to hang back and take your pot shots from quite far away without triggering anything. But players have easily and easily noticed and you are using spontaneous cubes to cover that entrance hallway so that the player can't get that line of sight that they needed to do the snipe shenanigans from the doorway. Um, so it's not impossible. It's just it just means that there's now more counterplay to that from a builder side of things, and I think that because of that, I don't think this necessarily is overpowered anymore. And I think it justifies a B slot. And the reason it's not overpowered despite its ridiculous numbers comes entirely down to the fact that it can only hit guards and can't even hit armor. The Volt Lancer has had, because we're going to do all the ranged weapons first, the Volt Lancer's had no changes at all and is still the best weapon in the game. It handles everything. It has effectively infinite ammo up to about 6 meters, like all the ranged weapons, but it can make use of that very well. It can have a zero point 0.8 second attack delay, which is the only thing faster than that is Falconic Plasma Bow, and it's as fast as the next best thing, which is the Fury's Edge. It's a lot. It's a lot. It can do everything. It can handle every situation in the game pretty much by itself, which is why it combos so well with so many different weapons. Because this thing handles everything for you, and then you use your entire other weapon slot for one tiny thing that you need it to deal with, and you just choose whatever that one tiny thing is. And like sometimes it can be bit more useful. Like the arc barrier can handle quite a few different things quite well, um, and the Falconic Plasma Bow can handle like all guards. But you can also go very limited and grab a Fury's Edge, which is still only really a um, good counter for bolt shots and like marginal usefulness in that you can break armor and then kill stuff if you get close, but you could do that with basically any other weapon. Um, yeah, so Volt Lancer still in S, I believe, and I actually think it's now the only thing that I would really put in S. As far as weapon wise, I still think it needs. I just think it needs to have its attack delay weakened so that the melee weapons can actually exist in a capacity, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not the one balancing the game. Okay, so we've only got melee weapons left. We're going to start with the Fury's Edge. Now, Fury's Edge I had in D, but there's been a very impactful buff that was not listed in the patch notes. Previously, when you were lunging with the Fury's Edge, if you were mid-lunge animation, you would not deflect. You would only deflect on the swing at the end of the lunge. Now, there is a little bit of glitchiness with the change here, in that it doesn't always deflect at the end of the lunge, and sometimes you died something you've just killed. But you can actually deflect during lunges now. Like from the start of the lunge through to the end, it's just that sometimes the bullets will spawn just before the end of the lunge and you will still die. It seems to be like a sequence break. It's uh, kind of annoying, but it's also kind of rare. So I'm actually going to move the Fury's Edge up to C because of this, because I previously increasing lunge range, which was something that you would kind of want to do so that you could make use of the high speed that you can get from melee weapons, was bad on the Fury's Edge because it made you more vulnerable. It made you more vulnerable in more spaces, which nowadays that's not the case. So lunge distance is now strictly positive, and that means that you can actually make use of lunge distance to you can increase your lunge distance so that you can actually get better use out of the speed. Yeah, get some lunge speed in, and then um, it can move around the map faster with Fury's Edge, like you can with the Sledge Blade. But the trade-off would be the damage type versus the deflecting projectiles, and I think that that is valuable. Uh, I do still think that the Sledge Blade fits in C for the exact same reason. I actually think it's still better than the Fury's Edge. I would rate it more like this. I think the main thing here is that the Fury's Edge, if it hits armor, will lock you into an animation that will probably kill you in most cases, whereas the Sledge Blade will get the armor break, and that will cause a stun animation on the enemy. Being and like the obviously other weapons like the Volcanic Plasma Bow don't cause the stun thing, but they also don't put you right next to the enemy, which is the problem with the Fury's Edge. It puts you in the dangerous spot and doesn't break their animation. Even if it didn't cause a stun, but just broke the animation of their attack, so they had to start the attack animation again, I think that this would be a lot better. Possibly that might even be enough to push it up to B, whereas the Sledge Blade would need something else, even just a little bit of base lunge speed would be great. Just like something to make lunges intrinsically valuable, whereas they're not currently. You have to run quick strikes to make them intrinsically valuable. Um, but anyway, I would put. Yeah, I actually think both the swords are like fair to use at the moment. So I think they're relatively well balanced against most of the weapons, except for the Volt Lancer. Um, it's just that they feel a little clunky, so they're a little they go lower because of that. Uh, anyway, this is the current positioning that this is my current opinion on the radar options, obviously besides fire links that will come up shortly. But yeah, that's it for me for this time. I will see you next time.